soldiers and ammunition that was being carried, not food or medicals. As the German tanks couldn't sweep them more to the east of the Volga, the Russian artillery had the chance and time to improve itself. Especially, they improved the tanks and dive bombers. The Russian Air Force also increased its power and attack. For both Stalin and Hitler, Stalingrad became a matter of prestige, over and above its actual strategic situation. The Soviets moved their army reserves from Moscow to Lower Volga and transferred entire country's aircraft to the Stalingrad region. In November 1942, the Russians held only a narrow street, while the German army had more than 90% of Stalingrad. The Germans tried a couple of more attacks to take the city before winter, but the exhaustion and shortage of ammunition slowed them down. Frustrated with that stillness, Hitler pushed more divisions to Stalingrad. He assumed that Russians were using their last remaining reserves. So a massive attack from Russians was not expected. But he was wrong. The Russian General Zhukov had been preparing since the Battle of Stalingrad began. He was planning to use the German units in the city. He wanted to turn the disadvantage to an advantage. Also, like in the Battle of Moscow a year before, the harsh Russian winter was back, sharply reducing German army's mobility and observation capabilities. It was time for the Operation Uranus. The two Russian forces would meet just behind the German army, encircling the army in the center and cutting its supply lines. More than 1 million Russian soldiers were gathered. Zhukov made a surprise sudden attack. It was very late for Germans when they realized the Russian divisions were all around them. The Russian counterattack started on 19th of November in 1942, 3 months after the Battle of Stalingrad began. It was the first successful and fully prepared attack of the Russians in World War II. The Romanians, protecting the borders of the Germans, collapsed almost immediately. In 4 days, the two spearheads of Russian army met each other about 100 kilometers to the west of Stalingrad. This was not filmed at that time. The Soviets reenacted this meeting for a famous propaganda film. About 290,000 German and Romanian soldiers were surrounded. Surprisingly, instead of breaking out, Army's Commander General Paulus was ordered to remain still by Hitler. Meanwhile, the German Air Force Luftwaffe's head Hermann Göring promised Hitler to supply surrounded army by flying 500 tons every day. But he did not consult the Air Force headquarters. he could only provide maximum 118 tons, and that was far less than the minimum 800 tons needed. The German army quickly ran out of fuel, ammunition, and food. The soldiers starved day by day. They tried to keep their positions. They tried to keep fighting, but these couldn't keep the Nazi Russian attack away. Soviets were initially surprised by the number of Germans they had trapped. They estimated 80,000, while they have found it was 250,000. So they had to reinforce the troops around the circle. Bloody warfare started again in Stalingrad. But it was Germans being pushed back this time. Germans were positioning in factories and streets that Soviets were inside a month earlier. A Soviet party made a generous offer to German General Paulus on honorable terms. If he surrendered in 24 hours, his army would receive safety, medical care, normal food, and going back to their countries after the war. But ordered not to surrender by Hitler, General Paulus did not respond. The attack lasted till 22 of January, when starved, frozen, and exhausted German army began to collapse. After a week, Hitler promoted Paulus to Field Marshal and reminded him no German Field Marshal was ever captured alive before. Hitler hoped Paulus to keep fighting or to commit suicide. But Paulus surrendered, with 91,000 ill, starving men with him. On the 2nd of February 1943, the last German resistance ended. Stalingrad is marked as the first time Nazi government announced a failure in its war effort. Russians consider it to be the greatest battle of their great patriotic war, and most historians consider it to be the greatest battle of the entire conflict. Some war researchers claim 300,000 from the German side, the Axis, and 500,000 from the Russian side were killed, while some others claim 850,000 of Axis and 750,000 of Russians. In total, it is said nearly 2 million people suffered, killed or captured in the Battle of Stalingrad. The truth was spoken again. In war, truth is the first casualty.